Everybody, welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield with you guys here. Fun show coming up today, as always. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, wherever you get the DraftKings Network. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, GoJo and Golic on YouTube, and get all our great video content there. We got Braden Fiske, Los Angeles Rams defensive tackle. You know, basically new dad. I mean, but if you got half your season sacked or career sack total in one season that's not even over right now, being Braden Fiske, going out here on ball and doing his thing. And Jason Fitz going to join us in the second hour of the show. What, Dad? You should want the next generation of young Caucasian defensive tackles to go out there and accomplish rushing the passer better than you did.
So that's the new way you're introducing guests, is by embarrassing your father? I mean, that's now the way. So we're finding out the way you're going to. Every guest, you'll find an angle on.
What do you mean every guest? This has happened one time.
Well, I'm thinking, is this kind of new year, new you? Is this kind of what's going to go on?
Not the new year. It's only 2024 still. I don't get to do new year, new me. Yeah. We're just trying it out here. And again, it was a connection because both of you guys kind of looked the same and played the same position here. And so I wanted the through line that, hey, look, you played this position before and did it very well for 9 years, but rushing the passer, as you've talked about, was not your specialty. And right now, over the last month, it appears to be one of Braden Fiske's specialties. He's done it very well. I think he's got, 5 or 6 sacks on the year. So good player. Rams should be excited about that.
Why didn't you just say Braden Fiske coming up better than my dad's ever been at defensive tackle? He'll be on the show.
He'll do that one next time.
You said that. Yeah, you said that. I wasn't going to throw dirt on everything you did. I was talking about the one part of your game that we've acknowledged was something that left a little bit of room for work.
But that's what you inferred. Jesse, back me up here.
Senior is feeling frisky this morning. Senior, you could just intro it and just be like, guy who played in the NFL, like GoJo didn't, and then we're even.
Yeah, see? That's super easy.
See,
yeah.
But I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that.
Oh, see, because he's your dad, GoJo. Well, he wouldn't do you like that.
Always protective of my children.
Yeah, that's a good dad right there. Well, I don't know. I'm kind of on Senior's side.
Yeah,
all right,
there you go.
I'm on the side of getting back to the damn content. We're going facts over feelings today here. We've spent way too much time on your damn feelings right now because that's what people around the league have had to do, Dad, in making some big decisions. We will get to previewing Thursday Night Football coming up in just a little bit here. But we know yesterday and really this week have been about teams around the league making seismic change at the quarterback position. We know Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons were the latest in that. They announced, Raheem Morris did, that Kirk Cousins would be heading to the bench and Michael Penix Jr. would be taking over as the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. And the way he found out could not have been better in my mind. This, for a quarterback in Michael Penix Jr. that we already liked, felt very good about, you thought was the best quarterback in this recent class of quarterbacks coming out of college. This, to me, green flag city right here as Michael Penix Jr. tells the reporters how he found out and where he found out he was going to be the Falcons starting quarterback.
I was shopping with my girlfriend. We was at Costco. I was actually getting a hot dog, and whenever I got the call, I wasn't hungry no more. So
that part a little bit concerning, Dad, just because, hey, I understand the nerves take over, but you're there. It's $1.50 hot dog here. You're probably going to have to eat a little better the rest of the week, so I'd enjoy this last meal while you can. But that being said, love him being frugal at the Costco.
Yeah, listen, love Costco. I mean, so happy after COVID when they brought back the food testing stations, right? Because those were gone for a long time, and they finally brought them back. I mean, that's like, you could have a whole meal walking around Costco at the different food testing, and then to go buy your food. They're Masters-esque prices on the food, and they said they'll never raise those prices, which is one of the other great things about Costco. So good on him, doing smart shopping at Costco, but not hungry anymore. I hope he still ate the dog, man. It's $1.50 hot dog, man. You got to eat that.
You do have to eat it. Hopefully someone involved in the process had cooler heads prevail. But, Dad, after that, Kirk Cousins said all the right things, said the first thing he did after he got the call from Raheem Morris was call Michael Penix Jr. and tell him, hey, I'm in your corner. I'm here to help you do whatever he can here. He immediately flipped into mentor mode in a way that's not surprising, even though Kirk Cousins said, I'm sure – right, feeling some pride about this one for a guy that's been a great player and a starter in this league for so long. There's got to be some ego to it there, but we're watching that shift kind of happen with a couple of guys, Dad. I thought this was interesting in conjunction with what we also heard from Aaron Rodgers the other day when he was on with Pat McAfee, a guy who, remember, was sort of prickly when Jordan Love got drafted by the Green Bay Packers, and there was this reaction to, hey, was he not given enough of a heads up about that? How it reacted to the relationship? And then he went out there and balled after, had MVP seasons and looked great again and sort of changed the timeline of that decision. Aaron Rodgers now singing a very different tune for the New York Jets at this point in career. Here he was on Pat McAfee the other day talking about his willingness to potentially go out and mentor whoever comes next.
When they drafted Jordan, I felt like I was one bad stretch from being benched, and I, won MVP a couple years. So that's the way the league is. You got to prove it. You can play every single week and through stretches. So if they asked me back and they drafted a guy, I'd mentor the hell out of him if I was playing, and I'd try and play as well as I could to keep him on the bench.
So, Dad, I guess with both of these guys, the question ends up becoming, because they've both been incredibly productive quarterbacks around this league, but one in Kirk Cousins officially shown the door, and the other in Aaron Rodgers, the writing seems to be on the wall, is there's going to be a new GM, a new head coach, and a new regime in place there. Do you think either of those guys is a starting quarterback for somebody come the fall of 2025?
I find it hard to believe that they will be. I really do. Now, possibly on the mentoring road, the bridge road would be the way. A lot depending on the money situation, obviously, and the cap situation. But I find it hard to believe that either. I think they've both shown that Father Time has caught up. Though Aaron's last two games has been pretty good, a win over Jacksonville and a loss to Miami in overtime. I guess you see how he finishes the season. But I think as far as bringing him back, even if he looks good toward the end of the season, it would kind of be fool's gold, right, to bring him back again, unless you did draft a quarterback and it was kind of just what he said. You know, you want to be a bridge. It's like what Sam Darnold was supposed to be for J.J. McCarthy, right? Kind of that bridge to J.J. J.J. gets hurt. Darnold's having a monster year, and now he's obviously a lot younger than Aaron and was still looking forward to a great career, and he's certainly on the path, at least the start of it. So that's what bridge quarterbacks know. They're bridge quarterbacks, but just what Aaron says, then I want to play well enough to keep him on the bench. I think Aaron, when he was going through the Jordan Love stuff in Green Bay, that was more than a few years ago. So he still felt he had good football. He was 36 years old
at that point, yeah.
Yeah. He was playing, obviously, MVP-type football, and that never leaves your thought process that you can't churn it out for another year and play great football when you're a great player. But, you know, is there the realization that, you're coming to the end, and okay, if I'm a bridge guy, I'm a bridge guy, but he still throw in there, I want to play well enough, and I get it. You know, if they bring a high draft pick in there, eventually that person's going to get the job. It's just a matter of how long you hold them off with how you play. But if you're asking me, do I think Cousins or Aaron will be a starter next year in the league, I would probably say no.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins seems like he could be more in a situation where he's released at the end of this season, because I don't know if anyone's going to pay for that current deal here. Atlanta already owes him $27.5 million of his 2025 salary, and $10 million for 2026 would be guaranteed on March 16th in the new league year. So that's kind of the cliff that they'd be up against. If Michael Penix goes out and is healthy and performs well enough to where you can feel good about that as your future, then I think it becomes a lot easier to make that decision, move on. Aaron Rodgers, 2025 cap hit, not crazy, $23.5 million. He's got a $35 million option bonus due in 2025. And so, and Daddy, I think he's indicated he's open to the potential idea of a pay cut and said if he's going to come back and play, he's going to take time to figure it out in the offseason if he wants to play at all. But if he does, he'd like it to be with the Jets for a number of reasons. And so that part does make me wonder, Dad, because we also talk about the quarterback class incoming and the changes that you might make here, and having Aaron Rodgers around there in the wings if you're the Jets in the midst of this rebuild. Yeah, it might have to be Aaron Rodgers without anywhere near the power he's had to sway decision-making in that organization and in a very different role. But if you do want to bring on a young player here, we've talked about how flawed the upcoming class is in a lot of ways here. That could be a realistic option for them at this point, especially at that number.
Yeah, I guess so. I should hold off on. I don't think they'll be a starter. They may be, or Aaron may be, a bridge starter, because you're right. I mean, unless they go with a free agent at the quarterback position, they're going to go with a young player. They're going to have a whole new, GM, head coach, assistant coaches. So Aaron's not going to have the power that he had when he first got there. They're not selling the farm to win under Aaron Rodgers, especially if they bring in a young quarterback. It's going to be about growing and grooming the next quarterback. And if Aaron is open because having Aaron with that attitude, I mean, the worst thing you want is a quarterback that said, I'm not a mentor. I'm not helping another quarterback, let them learn on their own. But if Aaron is willing to do that, you may have a more amicable Aaron as far as, okay, I want to play well enough, but I do know this guy will eventually take my job. If you have that attitude, maybe he will be the bridge guy, because the new administration and new coaching are going to have no allegiance to Aaron Rodgers at this. They're just going to have respect for Aaron Rodgers and the career he had, but no allegiance to say you're the starter for the entire year.
And they're also going to go off the 2024 tape, which has been largely inconsistent. You mentioned the last couple of games, there's been more of that connection, him and Devontae Adams looking like what you were trying to buy originally, but it's been way too few and far between around this roster. So I'm with you. I think it's interesting that Aaron Rodgers has sort of adjusted his thinking on this because he recognizes, hey, maybe I'm not the player that I once was anymore, and I can't go out here and command things the same way. You brought up the interesting name, though, that I think comes up this offseason. And, Dad, I saw it framed like this by our buddy Dan Orlovsky over at ESPN, who posed the question on Twitter yesterday of, who would you rather have of these quarterbacks going into next season? Brock Purdy post-extension at, $52+ million, $55+ million. Sam Darnold at a similar number. We don't know if it'd be the same amount of years. Or Kirk Cousins at 27.5, a cheaper number, either cut or taken on the salary for next season here. And I don't know, based on what we've seen from Cousins, Dad, if I would prefer him over especially Brock Purdy at that option. But the number is going to be the difficult part. But I want to hone in on Sam Darnold there, Dad. What kind of payday do you think Sam Darnold is actually in line for coming off this season? And are we confident that paying him outside of that situation in Minnesota is actually going to be a good idea?
Well, listen, he has brought the talk on with his play, right? I mean, he has exceeded expectations without question. Everybody, including myself, was waiting for him to fall to the water level that he had been, and he is not. For whatever reason, you can say he's gotten better. You can say Kevin O'Connell in the way he uses Sam. You could say the offense that he's in. Whatever you want to say, it's working, and that's the bottom line. It's working. So what does that do money-wise? When you were a failed high pick, you were a backup in San Francisco, and then you were going to be a bridge quarterback, and you're having a monster year. Listen, I hope the guy gets paid through the roof because we're always for players. I hope they get paid, but I would – all you need is two, right? All you need is two bidders on this thing to drive the price up. If it's one, I don't think he'll be in the 50s. But if it's a couple teams bidding, because he's still young, it's not like he's an older quarterback like Aaron or Kirk Cousins. He could have a lot of years in front of him, and if teams think he's turned the corner, he'll get a big deal. But I don't think the deal will be in the 50s. But it'll still be a hell of a payday.
It will. It's so interesting because we're back-to-back years of watching some semblance of a revival like this, right? Where we saw it with Baker Mayfield in 2023, right. And then he gets a much more modest deal, 3 years, $100 million with 50 guaranteed, but he stays with the same team, a team that was incentivized because of their timeline to keep him around there. And while it's a new coordinator, Dave Canales went to Carolina, and Liam Cohen comes over here and joins him from the Rams, it's still the same people around there that are invested in him. With Sam Darnold, Dad, the timeline of J.J. McCarthy becomes the interesting elephant in the room for this because you've been a Super Bowl contender. I know I got a bunch of angry Vikings fans with me on Instagram because I said that I didn't think their team was on the same plane as the Eagles and the Lions the way that you did. But regardless, you've got a legitimate opportunity to win a Super Bowl this year with Sam Darnold. And if he makes a deep postseason run and you're the Vikings, Dad, there's the part of it where I wonder how you let the guy walk out of the building. And if you're Sam Darnold, would you be inclined to take a little bit less in order to stay there, knowing that you know better than anybody what life on the outside can be like when you're not in circumstances that are healthy around you the way he's got here?
I think you worry about the now. And when I say the now, the next few years, and again, he's still young enough to have a long career in front of him. And if they make a deep run, listen, we've seen it work twice, not once, but twice in Green Bay. When Brett Favre was a quarterback and they drafted Aaron Rodgers and he sat. And then Aaron Rodgers was a Hall of Fame quarterback and they drafted Jordan Love and he sat. And Jordan Love is proving to be a really good quarterback. So what's the difference of J.J. McCarthy is on a rookie pay, right? So it's not eating into your cap that much. So you could afford to pay Sam for a few years and see how it goes. And sit JJ as long as Sam is making that run. Because if you're making that run, why would you hit the brakes on it, right? And do a shorter, like a 3-year deal with Sam, and maybe he lives up to all of it, maybe not, who knows? But I wouldn't get rid of him. Not if you're making a run with him. It's about, doing things when you can do them. Strike while the iron's hot. And if he's playing well and leading this team deep, the thought that J.J. McCarthy would come in and take them just as far would be tough to think. He may develop, but to ask that right out of the gate would be tough. So I would think if as long as you make that run, that Minnesota would try and keep Sam.
Yeah, it doesn't have to work for everybody, but if it works for you, I see no reason to rock the boat. But again, it would have to be at the right price. Would the Kirk Cousins deal from the Atlanta Falcons be sort of a proxy for what you could do with this, where, hey, it's 4 years on paper, but the bulk of it comes in the first 2 or 3 of these years. You try and front load that and give yourself a situation like that for JJ to develop. The wild card factor in this is JJ McCarthy, and him being hurt really makes this difficult to imagine the scenario, because the only other scenario we've seen, Dad, where it was a quarterback that was able to take their team to the playoffs as a veteran, usurped by a young player that was drafted very highly, was Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, the author of the God's Green Earth take back in the day for you, where in most situations you would look at that and think exactly what we're thinking with J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings and Sam Darnold now is, hey, if you've got a veteran who's still actually in his prime, not hurt, let's leave him in there. And then putting J.J. McCarthy, and he would have to be looking like Patrick Mahomes behind the scenes to really justify that.
Let's just say Patrick Mahomes is the exception, right? And you'd love to find another Patrick Mahomes, but let's just put that in the exception basket, not the rule basket.
Yeah, no, I would agree. But I would also agree with you. If the Vikings go out here and win 2 playoff games with Sam Darnold here, I think you've got to work hard to find a deal that keeps him in that building. And I think if you're Sam Darnold, there's part of you that's probably incentivized to think long and hard about how good that would be for you overall as well. Coming up next, we'll take a look at Thursday Night Football and see if Al Michaels gets a winner this week here on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here with you guys. Let's get into Thursday Night Football, okay? Broncos at Chargers. And fellas, this is a big one with a lot on the line. So both of these teams are in wild card contention. Denver can clinch a playoff spot with a win here. Do we expect a barn burner with so much on the line?
Yeah, Dad, this one's going to be interesting, especially given the trajectory of the two teams right here with the Broncos and the winning streak that they've been on here, the Chargers losing 3 of their last 4. And really with both of these teams, it seems to have come down to a lot of who's available for these teams at any given time, with an offense as limited as the one the Chargers have passing game-wise here when they've been without members of their wide receiver core, specifically Ladd McConkey. Things have really struggled. They've lost guys like J.K. Dobbins. And so, Dad, what seemed like a team that came in and reset their floor really quickly under Jim Harbaugh has now hit a rough patch where some of the depth is being tested at that spot. So you've gotten the chance to cover this Chargers team a little bit while you've been calling Sunday night games here. What's your assessment of them as we go down the home stretch?
They need Ladd McConkey. I mean, they need him. And I mean, listen, we talked about how they got completely rid of their offensive weapons in the offseason. They were going to build the defense and rebuild the offense. And you had the 2 backs with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Now, J.K. is out, so you don't have the 2-headed monster there. And Ladd McConkey had been far and away. Quentin Johnson showed a little bit, but then kind of reverted back a little bit. So it is Ladd McConkey all the way. And when he's out, it shows. When he's in, it shows. And they have to build around that. That's why I didn't think they would make the playoffs this year. I thought they would take a step back. So they've surprised me a little bit with being in playoff contention and probably going to make the playoffs. They're playing Denver now. They beat Denver the first time out, so they could actually, if they and they're 1 loss behind them, if they beat Denver tonight, they'll flip-flop and they'll be ahead of Denver. They'll be at the same record, but they'll have swept the Broncos. So they have certainly exceeded my expectations. Not like that was their goal or anything, but it's basically they're limited on offense now that they have the injury at running back, and you just have Ladd McConkey, who is saying, listen, he's got knee issues, he's got shoulder issues. He's saying if it's the difference of getting that extra yard or 2 or taking a big hit, I need to just go down and not take all the hits that he's taken. And he goes, unless obviously it's a 3rd down and we need the 1st down. He's thinking kind of like a quarterback as far as trying to preserve his body for the rest of the year. I mean, he has taken some hits and he has had some injuries that he's playing through. The game I just covered with them, he didn't play. But he played last week. I think he had 7 receptions. So offensively, they kind of go how he goes with Justin Herbert.
Yeah, and I do think with this Chargers team, and assessing both of these teams in the road that got them here, right, you also have to talk about the teams that they've beaten. We talked about the Chargers losing 3 of their last 4. They played the Ravens and the Chiefs in that grouping there, and that Chiefs game was a barn burner that was very close in the division. Their lone win came against the Falcons, which is also a team that Denver's beaten in that run there. And listen, the wheels really came off, and I think a lot of this, Dad, is skewed by what we saw against Tampa Bay, right? A 40-burger put up on this Jesse Bates-led defense that kind of wowed everybody. I don't think anybody was expecting that in the lead up to this game. So when you've got that on one side and then Denver on the other, yeah, they've won 4 of their games straight, but it's been against the Browns and the Raiders and the Falcons and the Colts. So a marked jump up in competition here that I think is the reason why the spread here is only a 2.5-point spread in favor of the Chargers here. It's a close game here, and the Chargers getting a little bit of that boost, albeit what does a home game mean in Los Angeles? So I'm inclined to think that Denver's able to get it done in this game, Dad, because that pass rush, getting to Justin Herbert and hitting him right now when he's on a bad angle becomes a lot easier of a process here. And we've seen when you can get there and hit him, the body blows on Justin Herbert the last couple of seasons have started to take their toll.
Yeah, I mean, and Denver gets to the quarterback. They have 49 sacks. So they can get to the quarterback. And Denver is top 10 in total defense, top 5 against the run. So if they force the Chargers to pass, they can get after the quarterback. And I like Denver in this. Bo Nix in the 4-game winning streak. Again, you mentioned that the level of talent they played wasn't the greatest, but you're still with a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. And the last 4 wins, Bo Nix threw for as many touchdowns as he did the rest of the season. He threw for 10 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in the 4-0 win. So still threw 5 picks, but he is progressing. The way he started the season and the way he's progressing, it's really a feather in the cap to him and Sean Payton.
Does the 3 interception game last week worry you at all for him? That finally came up
Oh,
this
sure.
season?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's a rookie quarterback. Interceptions always worry me, again, because it's the exception more than the rule of what a C.J. Stroud did last year. Is turnovers always worry me with a rookie quarterback. So, yeah, even though, like I said, 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions in the 4-game, but 3 in the 4-game winning streak, but 3 interceptions in the last game. It was a win. Their defense is really good. I just think overall they're a better team than the Chargers.
I would agree, and whatever you think of the ceiling of Bo Nix at this point, like how high you rate him here, and I hate getting into it because so much of that stuff with franchises where you don't have a Mahomes or a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson ends up becoming this ego thing where you always think your quarterback is playing better than the national media says that they are here, because every fan base wants to believe they found the answer at that spot. But I really think the resounding answer that we've gotten, whether or not Bo Nix goes on to become a Hall of Famer, is just Sean Payton's ability to get quarterbacks in a place where you can get the best out of them really has shown up over the last couple of seasons. Obviously, you had the last bit of the revival of Russell Wilson where he was able to squeeze what you could out of that, although you could argue Pittsburgh's gotten even more out of that situation this year with Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin. Yeah. But now going into the season with a rookie that was the last of the rookies drafted in the first round, the one that surprised people the most, to have it in a position where this is a playoff contending team likely going to be in the dance, and you've been able to do that because, Dad, Sean Payton's situation was very similar to what we saw for years with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, where we constantly asked, especially after the divorce, hey, how much of that success belonged to the other here? Drew Brees, a Hall of Fame quarterback, one of the most accurate players to ever play the position, and with that much ownership over it in the offense there, especially when him and Pete Carmichael were calling there, Pete was the first to tell you, yeah, this is Drew's offense. This is him going out here and doing a lot of this. And so for Sean Payton to come over here and be able to retrofit this to a new player, I think is exactly what people were wondering when he got back into coaching is, would he be able to go out here and meet the moment the same way without a future Hall of Famer there? And the answer so far has been a resounding yes in a way that's really impressed me.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the rookie quarterbacks who started the season, and there were 3 of them, right? Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams. And you look at them, and the thought right out of the gate was, wow, Caleb Williams, he has the most weapons around him. How they built the team. There was way more excitement for the Bears and Caleb Williams than there was for the other 2 rookies that started, right? But the unfortunate thing is the Bears were in the toughest of the 3 quarterbacks starting, by far the toughest division, right? I mean, with yes. Green Bay and Minnesota and Detroit, that was a tough mountain to climb. So I think even Chicago Bear fans who were excited had to be muted a little bit, saying how much of a jump can we make in this division? And they have fallen apart. They have by far been the worst team, and I think it has been a surprise. I don't know how many of us analysts had Washington and or Denver make the playoffs. And right now they're both, and Denver's going to be in. Denver is going to be in, and Washington is in right now with 2 rookie quarterbacks. So they have exceeded expectations. And I don't want to say Chicago hasn't lived up to expectations, because I think too high of expectations were put on Chicago.
Let me ask you in a different way then, Dad. Based on what we've seen so far at this point in their rookie seasons here, would it have changed any of the way you drafted them in the order they were drafted this season?
Well, I mean, like I said, I liked Penix the best, but we haven't seen Penix play. So we have no idea
so I'll say of the guys that have played this season. So starting with Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, everyone involved in that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not going to go crazy and say Bo should have been 1 or 2. But I would have taken Jaden Daniels first over Caleb Williams. I think I had said that. Well, actually, I would have taken Penix first, but I knew Penix wasn't going first. It was between Jaden and Caleb, and I had said I would have taken Jaden Daniels first. Caleb, certainly you see the possibility of what he can do. but he's also a rookie quarterback, and you see him playing like a rookie quarterback at times. It will be interesting when they get a better team around him what you're going to see. But I had said from the beginning I would have taken Jaden Daniels before Caleb Williams. And does Bo Nix move up a few spots? Does he move ahead of Drake May, though Drake May is showing pretty well? And again, Michael Penix is sitting, so you have no idea what he could do. So I don't think I would change it much, but I had said I would have taken Jaden over Caleb.
Yeah, I think that's the one I hadn't accounted for, because I had always said, and I remember when we had Nate Tice on, he was the first one that really was like, hey, Drake May could be the one, and he was kind of the 1B for me throughout most of draft process there. And I do think, hey, Jaden Daniels has earned it, man. If you were going to redraft this, I find it hard to believe that many people wouldn't take Jaden Daniels 1 overall after what you saw. I think Drake May would be the one considered for second there because, again, Bo Nix has performed very well, although if you look at a lot of the actual statistics behind it, it's not great stuff there. He's performed well within the context of that team. He's gone out and done what they've asked him to do in the body of that offense, and some of that has been extended playmaking. He's missed some layups in spots that I don't always love, and it's led to him, he's not going to be a guy that wows you in the deep stats. He's near the bottom of the league of most of that stuff there, and I would still say, hey, I take what I saw from Drake May and the ability he displayed in a situation that's far worse around him in New England than what we're seeing out of Bo Nix and build around that going forward. But Bo Nix entered the chat in a lot more of a way than people would have imagined there, even if he's not the star of the show, Dad. Like, if we're talking about the Denver Broncos getting this win coming up against the Chargers, a lot more of that is going to be because of the defense. Like, I don't think it's wrong to want to give the defense love where, oh, by the way, hey, Pat Surtain cleared to play for this one, so that's great news for them, the best player on that team on either side of the ball. And the other one that's become a really interesting factor is the health of Riley Moss, who's already been ruled out for this game, who's becoming an integral part of that secondary, and some wart showed up when he was out of that lineup. And so I think that's the unfortunate part of these QB conversations, Dad, is people end up getting upset when you want to give love to another side of the ball in the Denver defense that has been the story of this season. Like Bo Nix, it is great because we didn't know what to expect because Sean Payton's the name on that side of the ball. But the story of the Broncos season has been specifically this Denver Broncos defense.
Oh, it definitely has. And that's what we thought about the Chicago defense going into the season, right? We again thought Caleb Williams got weapons around him, and they had an excellent defense, and that's why we thought they were going to make this jump. But it's the Denver defense that really, while Bo Nix has steadily gotten better, which is what you expect to see out of a rookie, that's what you expected. We always talk about their sophomore year, they make a big jump, but Bo was making jumps during the season. Again, that's a feather in the cap to him and to Sean Payton. But you're right, the defense absolutely helps. And that's what we thought would happen in Chicago. Again, Caleb is a hard one to look at because he's been all over the place. Dude has only thrown 5 interceptions. I mean, he has not turned the ball over like rookie quarterbacks can turn the ball over. 17 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, but he's gotten the crap knocked out of him with 58, 59 sacks. Now, some of those are on him. We keep talking about the O-line, but some of those are on him, holding the ball too long, running around where O-linemen end up holding. It's been an absolute mess on the offensive side. So it's very tough to get a gauge on Caleb Williams. Again, you see sparks and then you see uh-ohs with him. He's been the most wildly erratic of the rookie quarterbacks.
Hilarious looking at this right now. Caleb Williams, 2,937 yards, 17 touchdowns against 5 interceptions. One of the quarterbacks getting ready to play tonight, 2,959 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. That would be Justin Herbert going out there and fighting for his life in an offense out here that we knew let a bunch of receivers go and invested in their offensive line. He's had to be careful with the football despite the fact that they still push it downfield a ton. You and I both like the Broncos in this game to get it done. We hope Justin Herbert can make it through on that ankle injury and at least try and put on a show on Thursday night for poor Al Michaels. Coming up next, we will talk to one of the young stars of the NFL season, Braden Fiske from the Los Angeles Rams. Stops by with us next. All right, exciting one for us as we get to the home stretch of the NFL season to check in with one of the most exciting rookies in the league this year, and that's saying something on the D-line that he's on with one of his former teammates. Braden Fiske, kind enough to join us now, Los Angeles Rams star rookie defensive tackle, just named Defensive Player of the Month for November. So good morning, Braden. How you feeling, man?
Hey, good morning. I'm doing pretty good. How you guys doing?
Good.
I'm doing well, man. I mean, not as good as you. You're Defensive Rookie of the Month. You're on the Pro Bowl ballot now here. Talk to me, man. How does this all feel coming at you in your first year playing NFL football?
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy to say the least. I mean, I think honestly, just going from the whole, college to you go straight into the combine, all-star games, the draft, and then you go get into a full swing of OTAs, training camps. So just to get to this point, I think it's pretty cool just to finally make it to what we're in week 16 now. So I'm just happy for that, in the last, but it's been cool. I'm just trying to stay consistent, stay on the grind. I think that's the biggest thing right now at this point in the season is just, remaining consistent with, the routine that I have and just trying to stay up on the body. Like I said, it's late. I think we were pretty fortunate to get this Thursday game, late in the season. Going into it, you're like, but, afterwards you get that weekend break. It's kind of nice at this point in the season. So yeah, we're feeling pretty good over here.
Yeah, you get the low and the high, the low of not many days off, and then the high of having a lot of days off to kind of rest your body. People know you and obviously your teammate at Florida State, Jared Verse, going to the Rams together. But what they may not know is you spent 3 years at Western Michigan before you went to Florida State. So talk about those kind of formative years before you ended up in Florida State. Did you envision an NFL career when you were at Western Michigan starting out?
Yeah, I think really my whole life, it's always something I believed in. And, each year, whether it looked like it was going to happen or not, I felt like I could make it. I felt like there was an opportunity there. And, I battled some injuries early on in my career at Western Michigan that, I'd missed a spring ball here. I'd missed a summer here. And, it's just like the frustrating times of like, you can never feel like you can get on the field just because of injuries. And, things just slowly started to happen for me, slowly started to click. And, like I said earlier, just remaining consistent. But yeah, I think going into my last year at Western Michigan, I wanted to enter the draft, and then boom, I get a shoulder again. It's like, come on, man, like this can't be happening. And then, a couple days later, head coach gets fired. Like, there's no way this is happening, right? And then, but then that was a blessing in disguise. I get the opportunity to transfer and go to Florida State, and then get to see what we do there, pair up with Jared, and we undefeated team. I mean, so it was a little blessing in disguise at the end of the day. But yeah, I think even when I was at Western Michigan, this was what I was looking forward to. Did I know it looked like this? No shot. But I mean, the fact that it's turned out like this, I can't complain.
You mentioned overcoming those things, some of the physical toll this game can take, and your rookie season, we hear all the time with that background of going through the combine and pro day right into everything here about that rookie wall. Have you felt any of that? Have you felt any sort of that drag late in the season?
I don't know if it's one thing you really feel, but I think it just kind of kind of comes over you like a storm sometimes. Some days are bad, some days are great. It just kind of comes and goes. But you just got to look at keep your head forward. Can't look in the rearview mirror because it is a long season. There's a lot of ups and downs, and you'll have a good game here, a bad game there. I mean, you can get exposed real quick, and I think just staying consistent and keep my head down and grind is what I'm trying to do. But yeah, there's no doubt that the rookie wall has came and gone a few times.
Well, I was going to ask what advice you had gotten from the veterans, but you guys are a really young group up front on the D-line. We know Aaron Donald's retirement was a big part of this offseason. So for Kobe and a lot of those guys that just went through what you went through, was there any advice they gave you on how to handle the load that comes your way your rookie year?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, we are a really young D-line. I mean, I think our oldest guy is Bobby, and he's younger than me, and he's in year 4, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, I mean, I just try to follow those guys and the way they lead, and especially Kobe and Bobby. I mean, those guys that have been and had success in this league. So I mean, as far as like advice thing, it's really just, hey, you gotta stay on the grind, stay on top of your game, because I mean, the moment you kind of take that dip is when you're gonna dip even farther. I mean, that little dip can lead into an avalanche. So you just gotta stay consistent and keep on trying to stay steady upwards. But yeah, I mean, those guys, I mean, they've been great to me, and it's kind of one of those things where a young group that goes through it together. So I think that's kind of makes it easier than having a bunch of vets in the room that are just fine. They're coasting through their year, but we kind of we're able to do it together and suffer through the adversity.
You look at the transition from college to the NFL. They say on the offensive side, well, overall speed is one of the biggest transitions, but on the offensive side, verbiage of the play calling. How about on the defensive side? Your defensive calls, Chris Shuley, your D coordinator. How has that transition, or what's been the toughest transitional part of college defense to pro defense?
Yeah, I think I definitely saw that early on in the season. I think you go from training camp, and I didn't play in the preseason, so my first game was Sunday Night Football against the Detroit Lions. So I got a taste of it pretty quick, and I think the hardest transition is there's a lot more that you're looking for at this level on the defensive line. In college, I'd find the back, I find the tight end, I'm good. Now I'm looking at formations. I'm making adjustments based off of formations. That's the biggest difference of just, seeing the big picture and being able to adjust off that, knowing where your weaknesses are on the defense, and kind of how the offense is going to attack you, especially, pass pro, in the run game, where your surface is at, just little things like that. But, it's slowly starting to click. It's getting better. And I'm just excited. And I got great staff around here that help me out. I mean, Coach Giff and AC have done a great job of, leading me in the right direction and, giving me the opportunities. I think that's the big thing as a rookies. You're going to make mistakes, but as, the opportunities that you get, you got to make, take advantage of them and learn from them. And that's just what I'm trying to do every day.
You mentioned clicking. That's certainly what your guys' team's done overall. 1-4 start, well publicized, and now you guys sit here at 8-6 at the top of the NFC West again. Take us back to that point in the season when things were at their lowest. What was the message from Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, and the leaders on this team while you guys were weathering some adversity?
Yeah, I think the big thing was we knew we were a good team. We knew we were a good football team. We knew we had the right pieces. It was just a matter of, looking in the mirror. And we were battling some injuries. I get that. But we were also just a young team that was learning to play together, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, the amount of, first, second, maybe third, fourth year guys that we have, I mean, that's a ton. That's basically our entire defense. So, I mean, learning how to play together, learning how to grow together. And, there was some hiccups early on in the season, but I think after that bye week is when, we really, took a look in the mirror and said, this is where we have to take serious in practice. This is where we have to grow. And, this is where teams are attacking us. How are we going to face the adversity and get better, especially in the run game? And then, earning the right to rush the passer is kind of a big thing we talked about all year is, we're going to stop the run on first and second down. Then when we get that opportunity on third down, we're going to get after it. That's where we're able to, we got some good packages with the guys we got up front. But yeah, I think as a team, it was kind of just a big reflection of, all right, how can we get better from this point and move forward? Because we know we have the pieces, just how do we enact on it? And I think since the bye week, 7-2, I believe we are. So I think we're just trying to grow on that. And I think the cards are in our hand. We just got to play them right, and we got to win out.
Well, and speaking of winning out, your game this week against the Jets, and while he's your peer, you're in the same league together. I'd imagine growing up, you watched Aaron Rodgers play and were kind of a fan of Aaron Rodgers. Now, how is it getting to see him maybe up close and personal?
Yeah, it's a pretty cool opportunity. I mean, I feel like I kind of see it every day here at Matthew Stafford of, just somebody you grow up watching, like, man, I'm in the same locker room on the same field, and you see the throws these guys make. Like, yeah, that's pro. I think that's kind of one thing we joke about, man, that's pro, that's professional right there. And, I'm just, yeah, I mean, it's a cool opportunity. I've kind of gotten over that, the awe of, I'm in the NFL, look at these guys out here now. It's more of a, hey, I'm going to work, it's time to ball. But, it's going to be cool, take the field, go to New York. And, yeah, I'm excited. It's a great opportunity for us.
You mentioned certainly not wowed by anyone out there. And during your defensive rookie of the month in November, 5 sacks, 4 TFLs, a forced fumble, 5 quarterback hits to go along with 11 tackles here. So things really clicking for you. And I know part of that, and a thing that you guys talked about around the draft, we saw the emotions around the decision. We've seen you both produce well, but having Jared there, having a guy that you just played college football with, joining you in the same draft class, is there an area where that's helped you most, where you feel like having him around and that familiarity has really benefited you guys this season?
Yeah, I think the most is from a competitive standpoint of, hey, like, I'm not going to let you get more than me out there. Like, in a competitive way, not in a selfish way, but hey, like, every time I get a sack, like, he's one of the first people I look at, like, hey, I got that, like, hey, I'm up one, whatever it may be. I think that's been like the coolest part of, even in the weight room, the film room, whenever we see each other, it's like competing. And, that was something I recognized early on at Florida State, was like, hey, like, I told him early on, I was like, hey, like, this is going to be the best thing to happen, because, we got to take this to a new level, and I'm not going to let you outwork me. And, it's kind of paid off since. But, yeah, and I think just from, like you said, from a familiarity, standpoint of, working together, knowing his tendencies, him knowing mine, and then, kind of bringing that into the entire D-line has been pretty cool. Just, we're learning how to play off each other, because, we got to rush 4 as one. When one guy is winning, and there's open B guys, open lanes to escape. I mean, nothing's working really well. So, we got a good group of guys, and I'm just I'm excited to get after, these final stretch.
There's no doubt about it. You guys have been getting after it to the tune of now leading this division and having a chance, like you said, to control your destiny down this final stretch of the NFL season. Again, you guys can check him out. Rams fans, go vote for your guy and get him into the Pro Bowl here. Braden Fiske, in addition to the NFL Rookie of the Month honors, also available on that Pro Bowl ballot, trying to really stamp what's been an incredible season so far. So, Braden, congratulations on all the success, man. Best of luck down the home stretch here, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you again soon at some point. All right, man?
Yes, sir. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Dad, the guy he's in competition with in Jared Verse, 5th in the NFL on quarterback pressures, so a good rabbit to chase, and it's part of the reason why between him and Kobe Turner and this Rams defensive line is something people are going to be excited about. We have spent so much less time this season talking about the absence of Aaron Donald than I would have ever imagined, given the fact that one of the greatest defensive linemen in the history of the sport just retired for this team. And while they're getting ready to make this playoff push, there has been no conversation about the lack or the loss of Aaron Donald. And that's an incredible testament to the way the Rams have drafted that position group.
Talk about the guys that were there: Kobe Turner and Byron Young, 7 and 6 sacks. Braden Fiske, 6 sacks. Jared Verse, 4.5 sacks. Now, they only have 31 sacks as a team, but those 4 have 23.5 of those sacks. So they're getting it done with those 4 guys rushing. That's for sure.
And as we always talk about, too, sacks, you're trying to get there and you want to, but bothering the quarterback pressure is something that people pay a lot more credence to now. The Rams defense 5th in quarterback pressure percentage among defenses in the NFL, behind the Cowboys, the Texans, number 2, the Broncos, and of course the Cleveland Browns and Myles Garrett still sitting there at number 1 with the glow up. And so not overly surprised that they've had all that success, Dad. You can see why. The Rams are a very competently run organization. They make decisions for the right reasons. They said F them picks for a while and then decided to cradle those picks in their arms like a sweet newborn baby and now nurse them into full adulthood here. The same could not be said for everybody here. Did you see the tweet that came out? Diana Rossini, our buddy over at The Athletic, put out an article, another scathing piece talking about the mismanagement of the New York Jets, led by their owner Woody Johnson, where, among other things, it was reported by Diana and The Athletic that Woody Johnson actually nixed a deal that would have brought Jerry Jeudy to the New York Jets, at least in part because his Madden rating wasn't high enough. Now, Dad, this is the same owner that we're hearing people claim behind the scenes that it was just a oopsies, a little fun to see how people would respond when he suggested earlier in this season to bench Aaron Rodgers after just 4 games. And so I'm sure that would be the rebuttal for them here, but it's just another constant reminder of the gross mismanagement that goes on in this organization.
Man, I hope that was a kind of a tongue-in-cheek comment, because if you're basing anything on a Madden rating, you should never be allowed to grade talent ever again. Though if it works, it would be great. When I was playing, Tecmo Bowl was the big thing, and for someone who I remember telling me that I had 26 sacks one year on Tecmo Bowl, I was like, I should have taken that into the renegotiations, right? Because I was not a sack master by any stretch, but 26 in a video game is pretty damn impressive. But obviously, I wasn't making any money off of that. So, if I so find that hard to believe, but if there's any truth to it all, that's just another head scratcher for the Jets.
We're at the point right now where the fact that we wonder, is it possible, is the biggest indictment of the Jets that continues to be. Is everything we hear coming out of that building, we're like, yeah, I could see it based on the way things have run around there and what's made its way to the field. But we go all the way back to the beginning of these conversations, Dad. You know what? I bet Braden Fiske has never had 26 sacks in a season at Tecmo Bowl. And so you can lord that over him for the rest of time. We will lord that and many other accomplishments over our friend Jason Fitz. He's going to join us in hour number 2 here as we look ahead to the college football playoff coming up this weekend.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. In college basketball, Oklahoma pulled off a stunner, beating Michigan in the Jumpman Invitational by way of a 4-point play from Jeremiah Fears. Fears finished the game with 30 points as Oklahoma stays undefeated at 11-0. The win further shines light on the best-kept secret in college ball. the dominance of the SEC. The SEC boasts a record 155-20 combined within the conference, with 8 teams currently ranked in the top 25, with another 3 being ranked as the first 3 teams outside of the top 25. The SEC conference has turned into a basketball conference, and come March, we shouldn't be surprised at their dominance. It just means more. You know what else means more? Jason Fitz, next.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of GoJo Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield, Jason Fitz joining us here off the top of hour number 2 on a Thursday this week. No need to adjust your dial. Jason Fitz, you can check him out hosting analyst work over at Yahoo Sports, inside coverage, the College Football Power Hour. Fitzy, how you starting to feel? Are you getting excited for this weekend in college football yet?
I thought you meant about Christmas, so I'm really excited for that. No, yeah, of course, Mike. I mean, come on, think about it. For all the talk and for years of hype to get ready for it, we're finally going to get to the college football playoff. And it's really, this is magical. Like, if you want my real, full honest, like, I wish that we were getting what we're getting in the first round all throughout. Eliminate neutral site games. Give me home playoff games throughout the entire, like, just the fact that we're going to see a playoff game at Notre Dame and a playoff game at Penn State. I don't care for all the people that are telling me that there's tickets more readily available than we expect. Like, I don't care. What I care about is I got a shot at a playoff game in the snow at Notre Dame. Like, inject that in my veins. Yeah, this is, I think, going to be one of the most magical weekends in college football history.
Yeah, we'll get to the ticket thing that involves Tennessee and Ohio State in a bit. But which playoff game are you looking forward to the most?
Yeah, Tennessee, Ohio State's the best. I mean, guys, if we're being honest, I think that we've got a bunch of blowouts coming over the course of the first weekend. Tennessee and Ohio State's the one game that I'm planting a flag as a beacon of light and a hope that we can get at least a compelling football game. But I do think, I've had a lot of people ask me, does the weather really matter? You guys know I spent 20 plus years in Nashville. Yes, the weather really, like, as now living in Connecticut, when I go down into Nashville, it's amazing how different cold hits to people in different regions. So I do think the fact that game's at night, the fact that game's going to be cold, all of that plays into it. The fact that I can't trust Nico Iamaleava to actually, we have no idea what he's going to look like in a playoff game. These things concern me in this matchup, but I think Tennessee, Ohio State gives us the best chance. Really, is which running backs are able to go off. But I think that game gives us the best chance at a good game.
I was talking about the quarterback situation in that game with Ari and Andy Staples, and Nico is certainly an uneven commodity on one side, right? He's had big games here, but that's certainly an offense that's built around Dylan Sampson and the rushing attack here. We know what the defense is. But on the other side, Fitz, how much more do we trust Will Howard in that chair in the quarterback room for Ohio State? Because I said this after we got through the game and Michigan pulled off the upset, that I went back and watched that one, and Ohio State had a reshuffled offensive line. Will McLaughlin, I think, had just gone down and been injured that week. You'd already had Donovan Jackson moved out at left tackle, so you'd shuffled the deck. And I watched that game, and I came away thinking they didn't lose that game because they got bullied in the trenches. They lost because Will Howard looked more or less like Kyle McCord did in the game last year, and that situation hadn't improved the way they were ready for. So do you give them a decided advantage at that position in this game?
No. And of all of the brands, let's say when we start talking about quarterbacks, I have trust issues with a lot of these quarterbacks, but Will is at or near the top of the list of the big teams that we think have real legitimate national championship hopes of a quarterback that I have trust issues with. And Mike, this is sort of what I tried to do this week. I tried to take like the Olympics, they take out the highest score and the lowest score. So let's take out the trash games in this process and actually rewatch some of the good games that we had throughout the course of the year. There have been some throws for Will Howard that I don't understand. I don't know what he was looking for. I don't know where he was going with it. Some of the interceptions, it's not I threw up a 50-50 ball. I'll always look at it and say, hey, if you're in a matchup where you think you have a decided advantage with your weapons, which Ohio State does on the outside, and you throw up a 50-50 ball and it doesn't go your way, oh, well, that's the way the offense is designed. I'll make sense of that. But man, that hasn't been the case. At times, Will Howard has just had curious throws. And frankly, I keep watching this offense and asking, where's the, oh my God, creativity from Chip Kelly too? Like, I haven't watched this offense and think, you know what? They've got a whole bunch up their sleeve nobody's prepared for in the college football playoff. I don't think that's the case for Ohio State at all.
So even though it's an over touchdown spread, Tennessee, Ohio State, 8-9, kind of like the NCAA tournament, not really considered an upset, though this certainly would be. Of the other three games of the decided underdogs, Clemson, SMU, and Indiana, who do you give the best shot to maybe pull off an upset?
I mean, honestly, I think so this is going to get clipped off. I'm going to get killed, but let's just go with it. We're going to go with it, and we're going to go with it strong. Notre Dame's going to win by 17. I don't even think that's going to be a matchup. I think Clemson was lucky to get into this thing. They're going to lose by somewhere around 20 in my mind. So then the only chance I got is SMU Penn State, and I don't feel good about that one either. I honestly, I think we got three boat races. By the time we get to Monday, the real conversation is going to be, was college football playoff expansion good, considering we got blowout matchups throughout the course of the first weekend? And through all of this, too, let's acknowledge that we're going to go into the second weekend of this, and we've had the glory this year of a group of 5 team that's been really good, but I could see Boise State getting blown out in that matchup, too. Like, I just think we're going to get a lot of blowouts to get to the Final Four, and then we're all going to say, well, why do we expand if the Final Four is just what the Final Four was going to be anyway? Like, this is the inevitability. I refuse to do that. I will enjoy playoff football even if they're blowouts, and I think they all will be.
Well, and I think this goes back to what we did setting an expectation for this. And since the day that this got floated out, I tried to tell people this did not create a more variable position or way to pick a champion. Like, there are still only a handful of teams every year that are actually resourced enough, talented enough, deep enough. And I think that depth is going to be the key in this college football playoff to actually go out and get this one done. And I think that's what makes a team like Texas really interesting to me, Fitz, because we talk about the chalk showing up here, and Texas has been a difficult one to wrap our arms around this year. The rest of their schedule, especially relative to their other SEC brethren, was not the juggernaut that those other teams faced. And when they did go up against the one great team on their schedule in Georgia twice, they lost those games, albeit in very different ways both times. The second time around, much closer, although how much you want to attribute the Carson Beck injury to that is you're more than welcome to. But For Texas, Fitz, I keep cutting on the tape of that, and I see national championship talent all over the field with that team. And then in curious moments, they get pushed around a little bit more than you'd expect, or all of a sudden protection leaks, and Quinn Ewers makes an interesting decision here. How do you handicap Texas and their opportunity with that coveted 5 seed to actually be a team that can lift the trophy?
Interesting, by the way. I love the way you got interesting for Quinn Ewers is like, you know, when your girl asks you how the dress looks and you're like, it's good. Like, interesting is a very polite way to say that, Mike. Look, you're right. And this is one of the maddening things this year in college football. If we are talking about the best from many of these teams, we've seen national championship caliber best football from Penn State, from Texas, from Georgia, from Oregon. Like, the list goes on and on and on. The problem from Tennessee, I would argue that Tennessee at their best this year, when they clean up the penalties and Nico plays clean, man, this Tennessee team looks like they could win a natty. The problem is we don't consistently see that best so often. Now, I go back to what the sort of the hallmark is for Texas. We've talked about it before. You got a bunch of grown men on the defensive side of the ball, and that defense played well in that loss to Georgia. That defense is the standard that I think the Texas is going to be held by. The question is, can Quinn Ewers clean up some of his? He hasn't been the same since he went out with the shoulder injury at all. No. And I wouldn't be surprised if we find out after this, like, we're going to get into draft prep and everything. I just wouldn't be surprised if we get the inevitable Quinn's going back in to get a little procedure done. Like, he hasn't been himself. And I don't know what the reason for that is, but he's had some long balls that have been wide open, hasn't been able to hit also. So I think Quinn's inconsistency is the one thing that would make me a little uncomfortable with Texas. Plus, they just, against Georgia, they couldn't run the ball at all. Like, I was a little stunned that I think they were at 2.4 yards a carry, maybe, and that's being generous. So, like, it's pretty wild how poorly they ran the football when they needed to run the football. So the problem with Texas is, or the advantage, I should say, Texas has here is that they're taking on Clemson. And look, if this was a different matchup in the first round, frankly, SMU, I would give a better chance against Texas. I would give Indiana a better chance against Texas. This just feels like a bad matchup for Clemson because, frankly, when Clemson takes on this defense, I don't know how they generate points.
It's going to get interesting for Texas. Supposedly Ewers has a mid-second round grade, which would lead him to maybe want to come back. And there's no way he and Arch Manning will be on the same roster next year. Someone's staying and someone is going to go. As far as a bigger picture, Jason, you look at the SMU Penn State game, both backups, Bo Perbula for Penn State and Preston Stone for SMU, are transferring out. One is off the team. Bo is off. He's left, and Preston has stayed through the playoffs. The portal opened last Monday. Is there a solution for this in your mind?
I mean, so you opened my eyes before when we talked about whether or not all of this should be pushed back past the playoff. And I think part of what we're seeing is worst case scenario for some of these playoff teams. I'm not sure there's a great solution. What I'm really interested in is, how does everybody start to value this? Because the real solution, I guess, if we were going to look for one, would be to say, hey, I'm going to transfer. We're going to play out the playoffs and we'll make that happen afterwards. But this is such a difficult situation because at the end of the day, kids got to look out for kids. And while we sit here and say, oh my God, how could a playoff backup quarterback leave his team? And I hear people say that all the time. I guess my question to that is, hell, I got a UNLV helmet behind me. I watched a UNLV team last night that I didn't recognize anybody on the sideline. Nobody sat there and said, my God, how could none of these coaches come back for a bowl game? And I know it's a bowl game, not a playoff game. But the fact is, for years, we've accepted the fact that when coaches have a chance to leave, they protect themselves. So at this point, kids got to do that. And I do think James Franklin makes a good point when he says, hey, you know, I want what's best for him. He has to go right now, but this is just a terrible thing for college football. I just wonder if the sky is actually falling or if we're just seeing such high profile examples of it that it's easy to say the sky is falling. So, you know, frankly, you know, go back to what you said with Quinn Ewers, like Quinn is going to play somewhere else next year. Yes. The transfer portal is what's going to change this entire game. You have to have a transfer portal quarterback if you want to win right now. Like, your team can't go in and slow develop one anymore. So I believe that this is only going to get worse with quarterbacks. I just don't think there's an easy solution. And I don't know if there are enough quarterbacks, to the point that you've made before, Senior. I don't know that there are enough quarterbacks to actually make it reasonable to change the entire system just to protect the 8 or 9 times that this happens that it would impact somebody.
I do think it's funny that you mentioned the quarterback development thing, even though it sounds like that's what Notre Dame's going to try and do. CJ Carr, who's on their roster, and Marcus Freeman's indicated, hey, we're not going to go to the portal for a quarterback this year. We want to stick with one of the guys on our roster here. Dabo Swinney, the fact that Dabo took his first transfer in the portal era this year is wild to me. Now, listen, he gets to feed people a certain amount of crow because, hey, you got your team back to the college football playoff. They did what Alabama could not as the two perennial faces of the 4-team playoff and got his team there, won a 9th ACC championship game or whatever it was. Like, Dabo gets to sort of flaunt his thing here, but Fitz, I guess I just could wonder for that one. To what end, man? Like, for who, for what? I understand the point that he doesn't want to be Ole Miss or Colorado in the way that he builds the team, but it was so long laughing in the face of a tool that was available to help them build a roster that just seemed to be done out of stubbornness. I can't find a good reason to operate the way that Dabo's operated. Yes, he gets the laugh that they are still a program that recruits and develops from the high school level, but to forsake this just seems like it was done for almost a bit.
Yeah, and at some point, what's the standard, right? Like the standard for Clemson is not an ACC championship. The standard for Clemson is a national championship. And I would say to anybody that says we don't need the transfer portal, well, to me, if you've got an area here that will help you improve your team, utilize it. I mean, that's simple. Like you don't have to have the best facilities. You don't have to have fancy weight rooms. You don't have to have any of the recruiting tricks that everybody has for high school kids to try and convince them to come play football there. So at some point you use everything at your disposal if you want to win. The transfer portal is one of the things at your disposal. So why be stubborn? And then to take one transfer at some point, it just feels like such a little fine. Here, guys, this is what you want. Fine. To me, just address it, address the reasoning, and then go in and utilize it the way that makes the most sense for you. And I had a coach last year on National Signing Day. I won't throw him under the bus, but I had a head coach last year on National Signing Day that sat there and gave me the longest speech when I was doing something for Rivals about how he didn't want the transfer portal. What he wanted were kids that he looked him in the eyes. He had made sure that he could develop. He knew their families. He knew what that kid was made of. He knew the fiber of that kid. Couple months later, he took a new job at a higher profile school. And what do you know? Boom, hit the transfer portal. Like, I just think at some point, like, just be real with all of us about sort of your approach is going to be what your approach needs to be to win national championships. And that means hit the transfer portal.
Well, and that's what makes this situation interesting because we talk about which coach is under the most pressure. People offer up James Franklin. Obviously, Ryan Day is going to be a name that pops up out of everyone's mouth. Marcus Freeman, fresh off a contract extension. The result in the final score for Dabo's Clemson team against Texas, I do think is going to go a long way to inform just how much the conversation does or doesn't change around Clemson when we get ready to head into 2024. If just making it's fine and you don't need to be competitive once you're there by sticking to your values, then go ahead. But if not, then they're going to have some things to think about if this does go the way that you predict with Texas. Coming up next, let's talk ticket sales and a wave of orange in Columbus. Next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jason Fitz here with you. And we have some ticket beef going on, okay? Because the shoe in Columbus might be orange and not red. So reports are coming out that 42% of Tennessee-Ohio State tickets sold on SeatGeek have gone to Tennessee residents. Guys, is this going to be an issue here? What is going on?
Yeah, this has sort of been the weird subtext to the entire first round of college football playoff games, Dad Fitz. It is trying to figure out how to make sure your stadium skews decidedly one way. Now, I think the ticket allotment for opposing teams was 3,500 tickets for everyone that was getting ready to go to these road sites here. And, inside baseball stuff, the opposing teams in these home stadiums are going to be allowed to do their normal, come out onto the field. They're going to get all their pageantry. The bands are going to be allowed to play at halftime. There's going to be some parts of this experience where it's equal. But Fitzy, this was designed and set up to give the home teams a true home team advantage when it came to that. Now, no one can make home fans not sell their tickets, but when the stakes are this high and you get this one opportunity, because the rest of the bowl games, to your point, while people might disagree with it, are going to be at traditional bowl sites here. We know so many of those bowl organizations wield a lot of power, want to continue to have their foothold in the sport because they all make a lot of money off of this. And so this is your one opportunity for a home game. And a lot of the teams that we're talking about hosting have been in position for a while in the rankings where you knew this was a possibility. There should be some planning here. And so if all of a sudden you've got 20% of that stadium that's painted orange by the time it rolls to kickoff in Columbus, Fitz, that's going to be a tough visual and for any of these home teams to stomach with this kind of stage and opportunity.
Yeah, well, also Tennessee this is one of those advantages where Tennessee to Columbus is not a backbreaker travel. I mean, I think you look at SMU to Penn State, that's difficult. Clemson to Texas is not easy. Like Knoxville to Columbus, that's easy and worth it to Vols fans. And Vols fans hit at a different level, Mike. This doesn't surprise me at all. I will tell you, when I first moved to Nashville, now I lived in Nashville for almost 25 years, right? And I first moved to Nashville. I had moved from places in the country that didn't really care about college football. And it was right in the heart of the Peyton Manning era. And I was like, all right, this seems wild. Everybody in every bar is just flocking to watch this. So I did the thing. I was like, I'm just going to go check out what Vol fan. And Nashville is a solid 3.5 hours from Knoxville, but it doesn't matter. Like the entire state is orange. So I go onto 21st Avenue at the time. I walk into this bar that's packed and I'm wearing a red shirt, right? I don't know anything. I'm not a college football fan. I'm wearing a red shirt. Happens to be Tennessee versus Arkansas. I also don't know that there's anything to Tennessee versus Arkansas. Again, this is late 90s before I do what I do for a living. I walk into the bar. I'm not even a foot into the bar before a beer is thrown on me and somebody removes me from the bar. I hadn't even had the chance to run my mouth. I got one step in, beer on me, somebody else picks me up and removes me from the bar. That was my first ever Vols experience. And I can tell you, it never changed. Even when that team is terrible, that entire state lives, eats, and breathes it. When I worked in radio in Nashville for a year on the morning show on 102.5 The Game, the funny thing is the number one topic is not the Titans. It's not the Preds. It's none of the Nashville teams. Nobody cares about Vandy football. The number one topic you talk about on radio is Tennessee football. So when you start talking about proximity to Columbus, I'm not surprised at all because Vols fans know that this game is going to be absolutely epic. And Vols fans know that they need to get there to support their team. This doesn't surprise me at all that they're going to try and take over that stadium at all.
Well, I mean, you look that years ago, Notre Dame hosted Nebraska, and a lot of the secondary tickets for that Nebraska fans bought, and there was way too much red in the Notre Dame stadium that the Notre Dame brass kind of got ticked at it. And what they do, and listen, I have season tickets at Notre Dame, is you get notes that say, hey, if you don't want your tickets, turn them into us and we'll sell them to Notre Dame people. Don't just, but you go on the secondary market and the secondary market is taking who's ever going to pay for them and buy them. So I'm sure Ohio State brass is saying, hey, if you're not coming to the game, don't put them on the secondary market. Try and sell them on your own or we'll sell them for you to try and not have the stadium have too much of the – they're estimating that Tennessee will take up to 22% of that stadium when normal visiting ticket allotment has it anywhere between 5 and 12%. So there's going to be orange that is going to be seen, and home teams, boy, oh boy, they hate that. And if it starts to go bad for Ryan Day and Ohio State, it could turn ugly at the shoe.
I mean,
Well, that was
just
what
the
Herbie
thought of
brought up
hearing
when we were
Rocky
talking
Top
on the
over
college
and over and
football
over.
rankings reaction show, right, Fitz?
Yeah, I mean, you start talking about just the concept of hearing Rocky Top over and over and over again in that stadium. But I want, and I don't know this, guys. I just wonder, when you're talking about Ohio State, how many of those season tickets and how many of those tickets in general are already brokered, right? Because you're talking about a huge football program with so many seats in there. If you've already brokered a lot of those season tickets, then it's going to be controlled by the aftermarket anyway, as opposed to a smaller school that may not have as many tickets left and right. Maybe they're not as broker owned and operated. Maybe that's part of how Tennessee fans are getting it. It might not just be the fact that Ohio State regulars are out on going to this football game.
And Fitz, that's a very smart and nuanced approach to this that unfortunately will fall on deaf ears when really this becomes, to some extent, it's about creating a hostile home environment, right? Where in the past, in the 4-team version of the playoff, the teams with the higher seed and the 1 seed in particular were supposed to get geographical preference in the games that got played when it got to the college football playoff semifinals, so their team would have an easier time traveling. This is supposed to be an out-and-out home field advantage, so you're trying to weaponize this as best you can to actually help your team out, to make it difficult on the opposing team, but the ego of this is going to be the thing that hits as much as anything else, and Dad's already talked about it. The strain in the relationship between the coach and the fans in Ohio State currently could be an ugly sight for that, but there are plenty of other places. Like Dad said, Notre Dame's not immune to that either, and so it's an interesting subplot to this weekend, is to watch the way that these home environments take advantage of this opportunity. It's going to be a big recruiting boost for them. I mean, hell, we spent the last 48 hours among Notre Dame fans. People were dealing in all of these rumors about black uniforms for Notre Dame making their way to the playoff game here, so much so that the uniform reveal finally came out yesterday, and they're wearing blue and gold with gold lettering on the back of this. And so it seemed underwhelming, but that's the kind of stuff where people are wondering, how far are home teams going to push, Dad, this kind of fanfare and this kind of pageantry around these opportunities?
And also, any school that's playing that's on a semester, Notre Dame already changed their scholastic year. They pushed the finals to end tomorrow so that the students would basically still be around. It was supposed to be, I believe, a week ago. So you wonder how much any school that's hosting a game, if they're on a semester, did they change their scholastic year a bit so that their students would be around? Notre Dame did that last year when it first came out that there was going to be a playoff and there was a possibility of hosting it. Notre Dame changed it just on the thought that they're going to host a game, and it turns out they are, and certainly just about all the students are going to be there.
I was so proud of them for doing that, by the way. It was the most football school thing that we had done in quite some time, and I was thrilled. And now to see it actually come to fruition, but to that point, it's kind of all of this. This is an opportunity, Fitz, that I'm sure the schools that knew they'd be within range of this, the schools that knew they would have a possibility, people have said, hey, you're turning it around on short notice, but hopefully it's not. Hopefully these schools are ready to embrace this moment and use this as a springboard for even more, in addition to trying to make it an opportunity to win.
It's also a huge opportunity for your football program and, frankly, NIL and money. One thing I learned that hit me really hard when I was, again, in Nashville, when I was covering the Nashville Predators on their Stanley Cup final run, I had never really sat there and thought about the impact that playoff hockey games made to an organization. The more home playoff hockey games you get, the farther you advance, the more money you make. Start thinking about what these home playoff teams are going to make in revenue for the week. Like you mentioned the All Blacks. My first thought when that rumor hit was, brilliant idea, because you're going to sell so much merch out of that thing, and that's all NIL money. Like this ticket money is all NIL. Anytime you get the opportunity to fill 100,000 seats at the average ticket price, all of a sudden that's extra. You need a starting quarterback next year, bam, host a home playoff game, and all of a sudden you're going to get yourself in that conversation. There's a monetary advantage to doing this thing big and doing this thing right going into this weekend that I think is long term. I'd love to see what the studied effect it becomes for NIL when it's like, yeah, well, every year we host a home playoff game. You'd almost rather get that home for revenue purposes, rather get the home playoff game than the bye, because the amount of cash that's going to bring into the kitty is going to help you get more players.
Yeah, and listen, now with NIL, we're seeing what schools are doing. And a school like Alabama, where the AD, Greg Byrne, has written a letter to the fans, basically saying it's time to fight back. You've heard examples of other teams using promises of $1 million paydays to lure away our players, convince them not to come to Alabama. It's time for Bama Nation to fight back, basically asking for fans to give money to the NIL. I mean, this is where we are. I mean, this isn't a small school. This is one of the most dominant schools asking their fans to foot the NIL bill.
Which Tennessee, remember, added a season ticket cost to every one of their stadium season ticket holders for NIL money. And at the time, some people destroyed it. And I kept thinking, man, there are arenas and stadiums all over the country that have a stadium tax, which I think makes a lot of sense. If your local community is actually spending your tax dollars to build that stadium, well, tax the people that use it for every concert, for every show, for everything as a way to help bring some of that money back. Well, an NIL tax on every season ticket holder for a college football program is actually a really smart way to help the people that are paying for the tickets pay for the players that are in there. So there's a fine line on the way that gets perceived later in life. But I think, that's a smart NIL process. Schools begging for money is just a reminder that there are a handful of schools like oil schools we hear all the time. College football heads will tell you schools in Texas have an advantage. That's real. I thought when I first started covering the sport that was just conjecture. That is real. If you have oil money, then it doesn't matter about return on investment. You're like, you want $5 million for Quinn Ewers next year? Fine. Like I saw the reports this week, and the internet's never wrong, that Michigan State is preparing to offer $4 million for Quinn Ewers next year. Why wouldn't they? You don't have a quarterback, you can't compete. So all of a sudden, if you're Bama, you're like, well, if Michigan State is offering $4 million for their quarterback, how much is our quarterback going to want? Like it's an arms race out there. So these teams are going to have to find that cash.
Well, Fitz, I remembered in getting ready for the college football playoff. Remember SMU, they came over year one, made the ACC championship game. They're not taking television revenue in the ACC deal for the first 9 years of their tenure in the ACC. But a group of 30 boosters raised $100 million in a week to help fund that program. A week. We're hearing about Sac State boosters trying to come up off half that right now. So there are people that are motivated the right way by ego to go and make this work for these programs. So you're right, Texas, it's always been different with the black gold underneath the ground there. But I do think the interesting part about the Alabama portion of this, Dad, that you bring up is the fact that Alabama has to play like everybody else now, because that was the whole point of the Nick Saban tenure is you always had something that everybody else didn't. You had a guaranteed path to the playoff almost every year, it felt like, with Saban, and you could point to these guys and say, if you stay, you're going to be a first rounder. You're going to be a multimillionaire by the time you hit the NFL there, and we've got that guarantee around here. And it's not to say that Kalen DeBoer is a bad coach or that he won't right the ship there in Tuscaloosa, but it's different now, and you're more like everyone else than you've ever been, and this is the surest sign of that now they've got to come out there and play the game like everybody else has played the game.
It almost seems, Jason, like draft or I should say recruiting classing grades doesn't matter, right? It's out of high school. Doesn't matter because what the bigger number is how many stay for their entire career, right? You could have the top 3 recruiting class, but if everybody leaves or a number of them leave after the first year, what good was that recruiting class?
And to that end, look, Yahoo and Rivals obviously partner, and I work a lot with Rivals. One thing that I think is interesting is I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see that number change. We're going to start to see classes ranked by 3 different categories. Who did you get from high school? Who did you get in the transfer portal? And what's the overall grade for who you kept in the building? Because it doesn't matter if there's no net positive if you turn around and have the best recruiting class in the country, but you lost everybody in the transfer portal. We're going to have to find a way to sort of associate all of that. And Adam Brenneman, who I work with a lot on the College Football Power Hour, has said repeatedly that development is no longer the number one job of football coaches at any level in college, whether we're talking about position coaches or head coaches. The number one job is recruiting. Are you recruiting your own players to stay? Are you recruiting transfer portal players to come in? Like everything is about the sales pitch, not about the development. That's just real for the sport moving forward.
I do think development will be the sales pitch in the right circumstances here, but that's a far bigger story for a far off day. Check out Jason Fitz over at Yahoo Sports College Football Power Hour. We'll get you all ready for this weekend's rounds of games here. Fitzy, always great talking to you, man. Have a good one.
Appreciate you, boys.
Thanks.
Coming up next, the NBA Cup went so well, they want to take it on the move. We'll talk about why next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here with you. Congratulations to the Bucs being crowned NBA Cup champions, but maybe the biggest statement was made by the commish before the game. So he had some interesting comments, guys, on the state of the league. Obviously, the NBA has faced some scrutiny about viewership numbers lately. So Commish made some statements about things like changing up the three-point line, moving NBA Cup games. Did any of these things that were thrown out perhaps perk the ears up a little, cause a little intrigue maybe?
I think the NBA Cup thing becomes pretty interesting, Dad, because the idea of trying to like barnstorm this or put this in, some people have said home arenas where you might have a little bit more juice with fans there as opposed to, can you make this enough of an event for people to want to go out to Vegas, put this on their calendar for their team when the situation is kind of in flux, and how realistic that is. Balancing that versus the other part of this, which is, hey, it's kind of a reward for players. You get a trip out to Vegas. I'm sure these guys in the midst of a long season can enjoy a night out there after they win and try and make it sort of a twofold thing there. But I think regardless, Dad, the fact that the NBA Cup through 2 years is already enough of a commodity to where you can think about how do we best leverage this to continue to get the most value out of it. That's the win for Adam Silver, who we know that was his baby and something that he pitched.
Yeah, I mean, you look at attendance. The attendance shown for the final game was, 18,519. Again, I don't know how many people were there. There could be tickets sold, who showed up, who didn't show up. You have to weigh that against, do you give it to your home crowd of the better record or going through? I'm with you, though. They're in a position where they can tweak it. They have 2 years now of sample size to decide what can make it a little bit better, because the talk had been how ratings have been way, way down in the NBA. And certainly we know the All-Star game is going to change, but they have to think about ways to make the regular season more of an appetite for fans to watch.
Yeah, well, the All-Star game, by the way, did you see Kevin Durant's comments about the All-Star game? Said, I
didn't.
I absolutely hate. Kevin Durant was asked Tuesday about the All-Star game change, and he said, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Talking about the format change. He said, terrible. All-Star game format changing. All the formats, terrible in my opinion. We should just go back to East-West, just play a game. To which I'd say, Kevin, that would be great if people would actually give a damn and try in this game. But unfortunately, the people playing this game, like we've seen in other sports, and I can't fault them for it totally, but it's a completely unappealing product. And so so I understand the league having to jockey this around. If everyone approached it with the sincerity of, hey, we'll just roll the ball out and go play a game, we wouldn't be in this position.
Oh, it's exactly right. And the Pro Bowl has been the worst offenders of this, right? But the players just all realize, why the hell are we going full go and hitting each other after the season just for the possibility of having to then rehab during the offseason? What are we doing? So they lightened the load, and the league responded. And the league is responding to, because you're right. I mean, Kevin, you can hate it all you want, but I mean, the game is unwatchable, just like the Pro Bowl was unwatchable, and people do still watch it, but you can't blame the league for trying to say, okay, we need to change this format because it's awful right now. The NBA All-Star, I only watch the Saturday night event. I don't even watch the game. Just like I stopped watching the Pro Bowl. It just wasn't worth watching because it was like 7-on-7, which, oh, by the way, they turned it into 7-on-7. So you have to find ways to tweak it to, if you want to make that weekend interesting, you have to tweak it.
Yeah, well, and I guess to me, I always wonder with those, have they outlived their efficacy? Like,
yeah,
I understand that it's still a great opportunity for fans to get to see some of the greatest players on earth.
Right.
And in a day and age of load management, Lord knows that's more difficult for teams in certain markets than it's ever been, where, hey, you might buy a ticket before the season to try and see a great player coming into town play your team and not get to see that player play. And so at All-Star Weekend, at the very least, you're guaranteed some of that face time if it's in your city. And I understand for a lot of fans, boots on the ground. I remember we sort of went through this with some of the talk in Indianapolis about them hosting events in the winter. And it's like, hey, like, this is still an opportunity for our city and our fans to get to see some of these great athletes come into town for X, Y, or Z sports. So I don't begrudge people that anymore, because I thought it was a good point and a good reminder of what at its base it's still about. But the All-Star game itself, like the actual playing of the game, that's a TV money grab. That's still them wanting to put something that's going to rate in a time slot the way that sports does and make money off it there. And the players basically saying, yeah, we do that enough for the games that count, the ones that we get paid extra, that we get paid our salary for, and that go towards us being able to win the championship, that the rest of you are going to lord over our heads this entire time. And so I guess I just do wonder, ultimately to the bottom line, how important is an All-Star game to where we have to constantly keep tweaking this if the players are making it abundantly clear they don't really want to participate?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question, and one that has to be weighed by each league. Is the weekend, because it is in hockey and basketball, it's a weekend. They have skills competitions in both those. Baseball doesn't. Football does have a skills competition, and I kind of like what the NFL has done to go to different kind of competitions. Kind of fun watching them kind of out of their element of football doing different competitions. And I do like the Saturday night events in hockey, or the day before events in hockey, the skills competitions. And I like the NBA competitions. It's just something different enough. But there is one thing to changing an All-Star game and another thing to changing the actual game itself.
And that's a far bigger conversation, and one that gets really interesting, because then if you start talking about tinkering with the three-point line or changing other rules, now you're affecting history. And basketball is one of those sports, and maybe not quite as severe as baseball, but greatly values its history. And so if you start to skew that by taking away the corner three and statistically the biggest outlier in the math problem that's changed so much of this, if you take that away to try and morph the game back, because Dad, we were having a conversation before the show, me and our producer Yates, and I thought he stated it the best, that right now it does seem like there is a lack of distinct identities amongst teams. There are still players with very different styles, and not everyone's going to be the same, but it all tilts to the same area here. And we saw that happen in the NFL for a little bit, but that sport different, more bodies on the field, different structure for it. And so it tilted back now to where we're seeing Saquon Barkley, running backs, taking back over in a way that wasn't true before here. For the NBA, I do think however you go about it, there is something to the style of the product and saying we need to get back to a point where you can tune in to see a team and believe that you're going to see their unique brand of basketball that you could pick out, and not everything that's all pointed to just the three-point line.
But you definitely have to be careful of what you tweak, because you have to be mindful. Let's be honest, of the record books, right? I mean, already in college football, you count bowl games now toward regular season stats, that kind of changes the record book. You're talking about, and I don't think it was going to happen, the golden at bat in baseball, because some of the rules you've changed, speeding up the pitch clock isn't really changing though it's affecting the pitchers somewhat, not really changing the record books. A golden at bat is going to change some record book stuff. Changing the 3-point line, now the 3-point line's been in place for decades, but anything that changes, any changes you make that substantially can affect the record books, sports have to be careful about.
They do. I also think this is like the trial balloon phase of these conversations, which is a lot like the golden at bat conversation, where, and we see this all the time, like fast food joints do this, where you release a very severe possible outcome of, oh, what if we do this very different thing? And everyone gets mad and go, you can't change it like that. When in all actuality, these leagues, these organizations, these companies, they're holding back the actual change they want to make until you get through that, so that they can come and say, all right, but what about this? And it feels comparatively less severe, and round we go. It happened with J.J. McCarthy in the draft this year, where people trying to talk him up to be the number 1 pick. And so all of a sudden when he goes at 11 or whatever it was, it's like, oh, Minnesota, they got this bargain here. What a great deal for them. When in actuality, probably where he should have been all along. So it's always just my mindful to be mindful of the man behind the curtain pulling the levers, because I'm sure the NBA is. If Adam Silver's saying it out loud, when rich people talk out loud, it means they've been whispering behind closed doors without us for a while about some of the changes that are probably already on their way. Coming up next, we won't change a thing. We'll finish it off the way we always do, with this, that, the third, and a tale about tube meat. Next. All right, let's finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick ones to send you into the rest of the day. Download, subscribe, rate, and review our show. Leave it a 5-star rating. Watch us live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, wherever you get that. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, GoJo and Golic on YouTube. Hit the bell so you know when we're going live in the morning. But if you got to miss us here or any of our great guests live, shout out to Braden Fiske, Los Angeles Rams defensive tackle, who's not better than any of the things that my dad did during his NFL career, but is a very good player in his own right that needs not be compared. And our buddy Jason Fitz, the host and analyst over at Yahoo Sports, for stopping by to talk a little bit about college football this weekend. If you guys miss any of that, check it out on the podcast or right here on the YouTube channel as soon as we get done. Guys, let's start off with this, that, and the third. We've had a bunch of conversation around college football and the playoff coming up, the transfer portal here. Big name hopped in the portal that may very well be a guy that could swing the balance for next season. John Mateer, the former quarterback of Washington State, who was one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the country, that no one talked about this year because we weren't quite sure how to handle Washington State for the vast majority of this season, announced that he is committed to Oklahoma. Dad, the 6'1", 220-pound dual threat star was considered the number one player in the portal this year. And for Oklahoma, we know offense was the failing. You had a young offensive line. You had a quarterback situation that just did not work out there. And so now they're going to try and do what a lot of people have done, go to the portal for a proven commodity, but they seem to have landed one. Brent Venables and company should be very excited about this.
Yeah, threw for over 3,100 yards and 29 touchdowns, ran for 15 more touchdowns, gaining over 800 yards on the ground. So truly a dual threat quarterback. And you mentioned Oklahoma, you know, had a little over 2,000 yards total passing, 14 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So not a passing team at all. They were a running team. And we knew their first year that they were rebuilding a bit, especially in the O-line, that their first year in the SEC was going to be tough. And it was, being 6-6. So they got a passer. They got someone who can throw the ball around and run, be that dual threat to put up points, because you got to be able to, SEC is a high-scoring conference, so you got to be able to match that.
It's going to be really interesting because we knew year one, Texas was positioned to do exactly what they've done coming into the conference. And Oklahoma's going to take a little bit of a back seat. But if you are Brent Venables, you had the Alabama win late in the season to be able to build on and point to. That defense still looked vicious the entire year. And, you know, the offensive line there is going to get better in a hurry. They've got one of the better O-line coaches in college football. But Jackson Arnold, that experiment did not go that well. He is now transferred to Auburn, by the way. And the writing on the wall was kind of there for this one here. Ben Arbuckle was his offensive coordinator at Washington State. Got hired by Oklahoma, as did his quarterbacks coach. So, Dad, this is also a lot of the jockeying that we're going to continue to see around the sport, is bringing in the people that associate well and work well with your star players to try and ensure that you get that position secured and fixed up.
And it is interesting to expand the conversation about transfer quarterbacks, is the fact that you brought it up before, that Marcus Freeman said they're not getting a transfer quarterback this year. They went 2 years with it. Sam Hartman, and that didn't really work out. Riley Leonard, obviously it's working out much better, but talking about the development of a C.J. Carr, who was a freshman this year, and not going into the portal and using one of the quarterbacks who behind the scenes has gotten play and practice and show team and such, and going to be a first-time starter.
I will say you can also get a portal quarterback and then develop them. See Quinn Ewers, see what we had for years before that with Jaden Daniels, who was a multi-year starter at LSU once he transferred. And John Mateer has 2 years of eligibility left, so in theory could also be in that vein as well. Going to be very interesting to watch how everyone handles these situations going forward. Let's go from young people to old people, Jesse, and talk about the secret to longevity.
Yeah, okay, Florence Hackman, she's 106 years old, and she is telling us that she can thank her long life and feeling spry and young to Fireball Whiskey, okay? Our girl's nickname is Fireball Flo. You gotta love that. So basically, she says, yeah, I have a positive attitude, and I love Fireball Whiskey, and that's why I have lived to be 106 years old. So I think the moral of this story is we should all be drinking Fireball. Is that what I'm taking from this?
Dad, this is my favorite brand of story, is the one where a person lives to an advanced age and spits on the grave of their doctors, haters, and everyone who ever told them to live right by doing things a certain way, by reminding us that their habit, that some people would consider a vice, is actually in their mind a key to longevity. I love these.
Oh, this is fantastic. And the manufacturer sent her complimentary bottles and merchandise for her 105th birthday. And then obviously she's still drinking it. I'm a fan of Fireball whiskey. I like it. I don't drink it like she does at the rate she does, but maybe I'll start. But yeah, I'm with you. An actor who young people would have to Google, George Burns, smoked cigars every day until he was 95. I mean, just kind of, hey, I don't care what the doctors say. I'm just going to keep on puffing away on these cigars and live to 5 years within 100.
Grandma Kate, she was Southern Comfort, right? When she was alive, that was her drink of choice that she would just keep on hand at all times.
A SoCo and lime
Yeah,
gully?
Southern Comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah, and listen, I tried Southern Comfort a couple of times, and oh my God, it was awful. Her and my Aunt V, they drank it. That was their drink. They were always had it in hand at get-togethers. Yeah, and it was nasty stuff.
And I think my mom's mom, Grandma Jan, isn't she a Fireball drinker? Isn't that Grandma Jan's drink?
Yes, she is a Fireball drinker. Yes, so she will live to be 100 and something. This seems to be the magic elixir.
Wow.
I do feel like in life, it's about finding out what your drink is. And I always feel bad because as an adult, going out to a bar and getting ready to order a cocktail, it's the James Bond syndrome where everyone wants to feel cool walking towards the bar, knowing what they want to order. And I've just never had one thing I can steadily hang my hat on like that. Dad, I know for you, it is the local beer. Anywhere we've ever gone here, my father is consistent in many things of his life. No matter the restaurant, we get there, he will not look at the menu. The waiter or waitress will come over and my dad will ask him, I want a local beer. And they'll ask him, what kind of beer you like? He will entertain none of their questions. It is dealer's choice for how that waiter or waitress is feeling that day to give him something on tap from a local beer. And it is remarkably consistent every time.
Yep. Listen, I'm there to support the local vendors, right? So the local beer, give me any local beer. And I'll try, if there's more than a few, I'll try them all. I'll give them all a shot. It's how I roll.
Love that from you. Man of the people, just like our next story, man of the people. The Suns owner, Matt Ishbia, has announced, new concession prices, $2 hot dogs, $2 waters, $2 sodas, $2 chips, $2 popcorn. Oh my God. I mean, this is just incredible, and you can drink a lot of local beers. Probably not gonna have local beers on the menu, but you can drink a lot of beers for $2 at the game.
It's a great idea, Dad. Wasn't it the Falcons that also did this in the NFL, drastically lowering concession prices too? Because let's be honest, they're not going to avoid lower ticket prices, and that's where the majority of their money is going to come from anyway. So it's a great thing to go out and do this, and it reeks of the everyman syndrome. Even I'm sure they're making it back somewhere else. None of these people are doing anything out of the kindness of their heart until proven otherwise for me. And so this is nice. I appreciate it, but I am also very leery of it, as you should be.
This is along the lines of Costco, as we talked about with Michael Penix Jr. finding out he was a starter, getting a call while he was at Costco, after he ordered a $1.50 hot dog there, where they will not raise prices on their hot dog. It's about the Masters, which keeps their prices low for food. And I mean, listen, you get a family going to any sporting event between tickets and parking and concessions. I mean, you almost got to take out a friggin' second mortgage. So to give the fans a break, what a family of four used to spend, $98 on hot dogs, water, and popcorn, now we'll spend $24 instead. You'll at least feel good as a patron saying, okay, I feel like I'm saving money here. They're not trying to just rip money off my body at every turn.
They'll find a new way. They'll find a new way. Because then you're going to be like, we saved money on the popcorn. Let's buy a jersey for the kids.
That's where they get you here.
Yeah.
Or at the Clippers arena where it's all contactless and you don't have to pull out your wallet. God forbid you got kids running around there just grabbing stuff off there. It is going to be a nightmare, but man, it is free and easy once you get inside there. The dangers of technology and contactless pay there. But shout out to Matt Ishbia there for feeding hot dogs to the masses and getting everyone right so they can go watch some Suns basketball here. We'll get you hot dogs one day around here in GoJo and Golic. Until then, just keep downloading, subscribing, rating, and reviewing. Thanks so much. Enjoy Thursday night football. Good luck to Al Michaels. Talk to you tomorrow.